Good afternoon, everybody. Happy springtime. Here we are on this beautiful Sunday afternoon in Chester County. And in some of the conversation that we had in the quote unquote green room prior to this event, somebody mentioned that they don't teach civics in school anymore. And kind of actually, that's what we're trying to do here, at least a small sliver of it. And we have this weekend, this program, we're going to be talking to 3 candidates for Chester County's Court of Common Pleas. But before we get to our candidates, we have a representative from Why Courts Matter. I introduced to you today, Katie Personette, who will tell us a little bit about why the average voter should care about the Court of Common Pleas. So, hi, Katie. Welcome to our broadcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Great. Now, Katie has a lot of stuff to cover in the next 12, 13 minutes. So I'm going to shut up right now and hand the program over to Katie. So, Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, absolutely right. Unfortunately, we don't know much about our courts. It's not our fault entirely. It's really the system. So I'm super happy to be here representing Why Courts Matter Pennsylvania to give you a civics lesson, government lesson, some schoolhouse rock lessons, and hopefully have some fun today before you hear from the candidates. So again, my name is Katie Personette. I am a Deputy Director of Campaigns with Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center. That's a nonpartisan statewide policy research project at the Keystone Research Center, and it provides independent, credible analysis on state tax, budget, and related policy matters. Underneath Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center is Why Courts Matter Pennsylvania, obviously focusing on the courts and why they matter, as you can infer from the title there. We know that no matter the issue, whether that be voting rights, employment discrimination, environmental regulation, healthcare, immigration, you name it, our judiciary plays an important role in our lives, in the lives of all Americans, and specifically Pennsylvanians. We were talking a little bit in the green screen, I guess, if you will, about how, over the last year, in really 2020, we've realized why we should pay attention to the courts probably a little bit more than we used to, because we saw how important the courts were over the election, over several issues that we encountered over the last year. So I'm happy to be presenting here for you today. And I am going to present kind of a Courts 101. I'm going to bring you back to your high school government or civics, or maybe if you didn't have it, maybe if you did see Schoolhouse Rock, I know I did. So it brings me back a little bit to there. But we remember that we have 3 separate co-equal branches of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, right? And so we want to remind everyone what the Pennsylvania judiciary is and how it runs. And so due to federalism, both the federal government and each state government have their own court systems. State courts are the final arbiters of state laws and constitutions. Their interpretation of federal law or the United States Constitution may be appealed to the United States Supreme Court. But as I said, we're going to focus on the Pennsylvania courts. So there are levels to our courts here in the state. This is a pyramid that shows you all of the levels. So I'm going to break it down for you here a little bit. The bottom there you'll see is our municipal courts. Okay, so this is our very bottom of our state level courts. These are our minor courts. You vote in these in districts in 5-year elections. These courts, you're going to hear about traffic tickets, maybe some petty theft. But next up, you'll see is the Court of Common Pleas. And so this is the focus of today's candidate forum in Chester County. So excited to be diving a little bit further into the Court of Common Pleas for you. You vote on these judges by county. And so the candidates you'll hear from in a little bit, obviously, are running for Chester County Court of Common Pleas. They will be on the ballot in May. May 18th is the primary. And then you'll vote in the general election in November. So specifically for Chester County, there are 13 current judges. In the whole state of Pennsylvania, there are about 451 judges who stand currently on the Court of Common Pleas. But in Chester County, like I said, there are 13 full-time judges, including 3 Democrats and 10 Republicans, with 1 senior judge. The Court of Common Pleas is a trial court. So if the minor courts can't handle a case, it will go up to the Court of Common Pleas. You'll see cases that include misdemeanor and felony criminal cases, orphans court matters, larger civil cases, family law matters like custody, divorce, and support. Pennsylvania, as we know, has 67 counties, and most counties contain 1 judicial district encompassing the entire county, focusing on the Court of Common Pleas. So when we talk about the Court of Common Pleas, we are talking about judicial districts by county. So for example, a Chester County civil case would be filed in the office of the prothonotary for Chester County, not for Montgomery County. We vote for these judges in partisan elections, which means, again, you'll know if they are a Democrat or a Republican. And they do have 10-year terms with an option to retain after the 10 years. So in retention elections, you actually will not know if they are a Democrat or Republican. It'll just be a yes or no vote. So you would have the option to retain or not to retain. They are allowed to seek party nominations. And so candidates are allowed to cross-file under both major political parties. Appointments to this bench may be made by the governor in the event of a vacancy resulting from voluntary retirement, mandatory retirement, resignation, removal, death, or another reason. So this appointment, if it does happen, would have to be confirmed by the Senate. I will say, though, that most cases that go to the Court of Common Pleas stays at the Court of Common Pleas and stops there. It is it's pretty much uncommon for it to continue up the ladder of our pyramid here. But if it does continue up the ladder, it would happen because if a person believes that their case was not decided fairly by a trial court, they may appeal the decision, and it may possibly go to the next level of courts, which is our immediate level of our appellate courts, the Superior and the Commonwealth Court. Typically, the basis for an appeal is that a person's right to a fair trial was violated. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court there, you'll see, is on top because it is the highest court in Pennsylvania. It's the final arbiter of everything that happens state-related here in Pennsylvania, unless it goes against our federal constitution. So we're going to dive a little bit into the appellate courts now, which has been the main focus of why courts matter over the last several months. So when we think of our appellate courts, you hear appeal in the name, right? Appellate, appeal. So appeal meaning a legal proceeding by which a case is brought before a higher court or review of the decision of a lower court, for a review. Again, if a person believes that their case was not decided fairly by a trial court, they may appeal that decision, and it would come to the intermediate level of our appellate courts, again, our Superior and Commonwealth. So we're going to start with the Superior Court first here. You'll see that there are 15 judges. There is currently 1 vacancy. It is evenly split because of that vacancy. So we have seven Democrats and 7 Republicans. The Superior Court hears criminal and civil cases. You'll also notice that there is only 1 person of color who currently sits on the Superior Court, Judge Carolyn Nichols. She is the only person of color who sits on all of our appellate courts. These judges we vote for these judges in partisan elections, meaning, again, you will know if they are a Democrat or a Republican. They do also still have 10-year terms with the option for retention. So what we've been trying to really focus on is humanizing the courts, trying to understand what kind of cases are shown, what kind of cases and how they affect us. So I have a special graphic here, which many of you maybe can realize something familiar. This is Melody, a beautiful Labrador Golden Retriever mix. She is now a retired member of your own Chester County Sheriff's Department K-9 unit. And she was actually a support dog for an autistic minor witness in a 2018 murder trial. And so this is a pretty interesting story. The minor witness had expressed to law enforcement that she was concerned about her safety coming to court and testifying. And so she asked if the dog could accompany her to the stand as she testified. The county court, the lower level court, had agreed to allow the minor witness to have Melody sit next to her at the witness stand. And so she did. And then after an appeal by the convicted, the Pennsylvania Superior Court agreed just in May of 2020 with that lower court's ruling that Melody was able to be present in the courtroom for the witness to testify. Because of another appeal, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court now will actually hear this case. And so this is pretty interesting because this will be the first case in which Pennsylvania courts will be asked to address the use of support animals by witnesses during criminal trials. So I found that pretty interesting. And again, a Chester County native, Melody, they're representing. So next we have the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. This is, again, one of two of the intermediate appellate courts in Pennsylvania. It is unique to the state. It is the only court in the United States that specifically hears state government and government agency cases. It consists of 9 judges, and they each serve 10-year terms. Again, partisan elections with retention option. And so this humanizing graphic here is showing Miss Lorraine Haw. She's actually a Philadelphia resident and was one of the plaintiffs in a 2019 lawsuit, against the ballot question involving Marsy's Law before that election. So if you remember back then, there was a ballot referendum question in 2019 referencing Marsy's Law, which was then described as a victim's bill, a victim rights bill. And so Lorraine, Miss Haw, was pretty conflicted on how she was going to vote on this ballot question because she was pretty familiar with the criminal justice system herself, and she also lost her brother and son to crime. So when it came up to be reading the questions, she agreed with some things and she didn't agree with others. And it turns out that actually in January of this year of 2021, the Commonwealth Court ruled that Marsy's Law was unconstitutional and invalidated the referendum votes, stating that the law was trying to change too many things at once. So finally, we have the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Again, it's our highest court in the state. Fun fact, it's also the oldest appellate court in the United States, founded in 1722. There are 7 justices, 5 Democrats, 2 Republicans, again, each serving 10-year terms with retention elections. And so finally here, our humanizing graphic to show what kind of case is shown at the Supreme Court is Kiera Tucker. And her story is probably not unfamiliar to many of us. She actually requested a mail-in ballot for the 2020 election. And she didn't receive it in time to vote. So she actually voted provisionally for the 2020 general election. She received then, days later, a letter in the mail stating that her ballot and her vote was being challenged. So this was probably, like I said, pretty familiar to a lot of us. A lot of us requested mail-in ballots. Many of us also probably voted provisionally because we didn't receive our mail-in ballots in time. And here's an example of what happened. So Kiera received that letter, her vote was being challenged, but because Pennsylvania's Supreme Court rejected attempts to contest provisional and mail-in ballots, Kiera's voice and ballot were heard. So that's pretty interesting to show you how, in fact, these courts affect our lives, specifically the lives of Pennsylvanians. And with that, I'm going to conclude my presentation. I would, if there are any questions out there, please let me know.
Well, you see Katie's email up there, and we'll provide it again on the Indivisible Chester County Facebook page. And Katie, thank you very much for your wealth of information there and making yourself available as a resource to Indivisible Chester County and our members and the public at large. We appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And moving right along, we have our first judicial candidate now. So I would like to introduce to you Mr. Carlos Barraza.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well, Carlos. How are you?
Good. Beautiful day outside today.
It sure is. It sure is. I can hear somebody in the background chainsawing something. So, so anyway, we're going to jump right into it, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Carlos Barraza. I'm a candidate for the judge of the Court of Common Pleas. I've been a prosecutor for the past 18 years. I'm a naturalized citizen to the United States, and as such, I've always felt an obligation to give back to my adopted home country and county, and that's why I've been a prosecutor my entire career. I'm currently a senior deputy district attorney. I am in charge of major crime investigations, which means I'm in charge of all violent firearm offenses, attempted homicides, and homicide investigations. I have over 80 jury trials in the county, covering all the gamut of cases from DUI all the way to murder cases. I prosecuted over 20 homicide cases and over 8 murder cases. Since 2013, up until about a month ago, I was in charge of training all new assistant district attorneys with our office. I've trained over 60 prosecutors on how to do their jobs fairly and equally. I'm teaching them what it means to be a prosecutor and to do it with integrity. I'm also looking to make a little bit of history. Some of the presentation that Katie mentioned, she mentioned about how there's only one person of color on the appellate courts. Well, in the Chester County Court of Common Pleas, we have not had a person of color on the bench since 2004. That's over 15 judges in over 15 years, not a single one. And in fact, in the past 250 years here in Chester County, we've only had 2 people of color ever on the bench. And I'm actually looking to be not only the first Mexican American and the first naturalized citizen on the bench here in Chester County, I'm looking to be only the second Mexican American ever elected to any bench here in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So I bring a combination of my dedication and my experience, as well as being able to bring some intangibles, including things like integrity and things like diversity and inclusion to the bench.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So besides what you've just, you kind of answered my next question, but all our candidates, I feel, are very well qualified for the job that they seek. But what sets you apart?
I think the difference is that my entire career has actually been spent in the courtroom. When you heard a little bit about Katie's presentation, she told you that the Court of Common Pleas is a trial court position. So actually being somebody who's actually been in the courtroom and has done trials is important. I've done numerous trials, and it's a difference because when you're in court, you have to make decisions quickly and efficiently. So you have to know the rules, and you need to know the rules of evidence and be able to decide what's going on. And that's not something you can learn from a book or watching a YouTube video. It's only something that you can really learn from actually being in the courtroom and doing it. So that sets me apart over the other candidates because I have more courtroom experience and trial experience than any other candidate that's involved. But also, there's a difference. As a prosecutor, I make decisions every single day. And throughout my career, I've honed 2 things that are very important to be a judge. That is discretion and judgment. I'm the one that makes decisions every day, trying to determine whether I approve search warrants or court orders that allows the police to be able to investigate people. I'm the one that makes a decision whether we have probable cause to actually arrest somebody, which is the most serious thing that you can do to any of our citizens. And then ultimately, I'm the one that makes decisions every single day on whether somebody needs to plead to a felony or a misdemeanor. Do they get jail time? Do they get probation? Do they need treatment? Those are the type of decisions I make every single day. And that has allowed me over the past 18 years to be able to hone that discretion and that judgment, which are the cornerstones of a judge.
Okay, here's a question. I think asking you first, you'll have a little bit of advantage over the other 2 candidates. Say over the next, the past 10 or 20 years, what are some high-profile cases that have been decided in the Chester County Court of Common Pleas that our viewers and Chester County residents might be familiar with?
A couple of high-profile cases. I know from the criminal side, we've had several high-profile child abuse cases. Our current DA, Deb Ryan, actually prosecuted an individual who had been sexually abusing his stepdaughters and his daughters over the course of 20 or 30 years. Judge William Mann ended up giving him one of the longest sentences you've ever heard here in Pennsylvania, and I believe was over 300 years. We also had horrible homicide cases like Scotty McMillan, which was also, Deb Ryan was the initial point person on that case when she was the head of the child abuse unit, which obviously made headlines around the world because it was just absolutely horrible what they did to that young man. But there's a lot of cases, most of them have been criminal, that have been involved in civil cases. I don't think that there's anything that would really be noteworthy to a lot of the people that you've heard around, but we've had a lot of serious crimes that have been committed here, and they made the news all over the world.
I see, I see. So I was going to ask you why voters should care about the Court of Common Pleas when they go into the voting booth, but I think you've just pretty much laid that out. I just know that there's a general frustration that I have felt many times when I've gone in to vote myself. And, of course, we all know, who we want usually when we go, hopefully we do when we go into the voting booth, who we would like to vote for president or governor or mayor or whatever the case may be. But then sometimes these judgeships we don't really understand, and then we end up just going, down the party line or whatever motivates us to vote for who we do when we don't know, or not vote. In some cases, people skip right over that, and that's a shame.
Yeah, and I think, obviously being mayor, that local politicians and local elected officials have the ability to affect people's lives quicker and in a more direct way than a lot of the other ones. Obviously, congressman, senator, president are extremely important. There's no doubt about that. But there is a big difference, whether it be a Court of Common Pleas, whether it be a mayor, whether it be a council person. These are people that actually live in the community. So they know the community, and they should know what the issues are that the community has to deal with. So they're very important, like you mentioned, because of the fact that they're keenly aware of the things that affect the people and that they represent.
I see. How has it been campaigning? Have you been able to get out anywhere, with COVID and
yes,
and all that?
I've been going out every weekend. I actually just got back from Wilson Farm Park in Tredyffrin, where I was out meeting with people. It's been actually really fantastic. I've been pleasantly surprised at the amount of people who are actually willing to engage. I'm always surprised when I approach people or knock on people's doors that they're willing to answer the door and actually engage in conversations. Actually, when I was doing petition signing, it was quite interesting because I actually knocked on the door of somebody that I prosecuted before. But I ended up having a half an hour conversation with the guy, and it was actually a really great conversation. I felt like both of us after the fact felt really good about it. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you're not outside actually knocking on doors, of approaching people and talking with them, and people are willing to talk to you and listen to what you have to say, which is fantastic.
Excellent. Well, I kind of running short on questions here. So unless you have one parting thing that you would like to say to indivisible Chester County and the voters of Chester County.
I think elections obviously do matter, and judges matter. And people who actually have the experience of being in the courtroom make a huge difference, because you have to know how a courtroom operates to be able to run a particular courtroom. And also, there's something that I bring to the table that nobody else brings, and that I bring to the table the opportunity to make history. Like I said, I would only be the second Mexican American ever on the bench in the entire state of Pennsylvania. And more than ever now, after what we've gone through in 2020, we need things like that. We need things that will inspire us, that will bring the best out of us. But not only as Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. We have an opportunity to be able to bring people together. And I think now more than ever, that's important. And it's important to us to do it on our terms, under our values, and to be able to tell them, look, things like truth, experience, integrity, and diversity matter. And when we present candidates, that's what we're bringing to the table. And we're bringing to the table people that will represent all of us, not just some of us.
Excellent. Well, I think we've already mentioned that of the three candidates that we're interviewing this afternoon, there are 2 seats available. Yes. And so there will be 2 Democratic candidates on the ballot in November. Two of the three people that we're speaking with today. So I should have done my homework, and I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit and ask you the three seats, or the two seats that are you're seeking to fill. Are they currently held by Republicans or Democrats?
Technically, both Republicans. One was Judge Sarcione. He retired, so technically it's an open seat right now. But it was held by Judge Sarcione, who was a Republican. And the second seat is Judge Tennell, who's not seeking retention, who was a Republican.
I get it. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail even further. And I've been, I think you're a strong candidate, and I'm not telling anybody who I'm endorsing or who I'm voting for yet, but I wish you all very much good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to address your group.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Carlos.
Have a good day.
You too. Okay, so we have a few minutes to kill here before we get to our next candidate. Our next candidate will be Alita Rovito, and I found it interesting about I've been following all three of the candidates on social media, and as somebody who is currently running for re-election in my small corner of the county, going out and knocking on doors is somewhat a daunting process, which we've all hopefully gotten over our fear of knocking on doors, for lack of a better term. But to do so during a pandemic can be tough. It's tough. And that's partly why we like to do these forums here, where people can kind of talk to the candidates in a more safer method. Also, I would totally recommend that if you have questions for any of the candidates for any office, that you reach out to them through their websites or their social media campaigns, and you can ask the questions that way. So I'm just waiting for the clock to tick off. We have about 2 minutes to go to our next contestant. Oh, man, it's been a long next contestant. Okay, blooper reel. I wonder among our members of Indivisible Chester County, and this question is something for discussion on our Facebook pages. Voting by mail. I think that many of us voted by mail for the first time in the previous year's elections, and now I think that the troubles with the United States Post Office have gotten even worse. And I am told by our producer that we are ready with our next candidate, so I will gladly shut up and introduce to you Alita Rovito.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here with you.
Hi, Alita. Thank you for joining us today, and we're really glad to have you here. And I am going to give you as much time as you would like to basically campaign and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Phil. I appreciate it. So my name's Alita Rovito. I've been an attorney for 33 years. I have spent all but a short window here in Chester County. I've spent 21 of those 33 years serving the citizens of Chester County, 6 as an assistant district attorney, and 15 years as a hearing officer in the Court of Common Pleas for Family Court. Since 2009, I opened up my own practice, and I practice family law here in Chester County. So in my mind, in my opinion, I think I had the opportunity to listen to Carlos, and he said a lot of things that were important, such as experience matters. And I believe I'm the best candidate because I have the broadest base of experience. I spent 6 years prosecuting crimes, much like other sitting judges, much like Carlos. I prosecuted all sorts of jury, non-jury trials. I had the opportunity to start the first child abuse unit here in Chester County. A grant was written. Judge Cody ascended to the bench before that grant was implemented. I became the first managing attorney of that unit here in Chester County. It was one of a handful across the state, and it has become a prototype for many of the units that are currently in existence in Pennsylvania. In 1994, I became a hearing officer in family court. And in Chester County, a hearing officer sits very much like a judge. They have a courtroom, they listen to witnesses, they swear witnesses in, they rule on evidence, they write extensive reports, and they judge credibility. I heard custody cases, equitable distribution and divorce, property division. I had the opportunity to sit in support court. And I would fill in for the juvenile judges, the juvenile hearing officers in juvenile dependency, which involved children who had children, youth, and family involvement, and into juvenile delinquency for children who had been arrested for crimes. I did that job for 15 years, and I decided to open my own practice where I represent both men and women in the area of family law. I have been appointed by the court as an arbitrator, a mediator in family law cases. I've acted as a guardian ad litem for children, which is somebody who can speak to the court as to what's in the kid's best interest with a direct pipeline to the children. And I have also been appointed as a parenting coordinator. So I believe that my experience is criminal and civil. And I have the experience of being a family lawyer as well. And I think that's something we need in Chester County.
Yeah, I mean, when somebody who wonders, how does this court affect me? Well, when you're talking about family law and things like that, obviously, it doesn't get more personal than that. That's the truth. One of the challenges of getting questions together to interview candidates for judgeship is, I think naturally you might want to ask, how would you rule on this, or how would you rule on that? And I think as we've learned from Supreme Court hearings, you can't answer those kind of questions because you want to go into a courtroom with an open mind and a clean slate, not a pre-bias. So, but I asked Carlos the same question. In demonstrating to indivisible Chester County members, what cases over the past couple of decades do you think really have been in these courtrooms that have that we've probably heard of, that have somewhat notoriety? Or
well, I can think of two cases off the top of my head. One's a family law case and one's a criminal case. So the family law case. So it used to be that the court could order people who were divorced that they both parents were legally obligated to pay for a child's college education. And that was the law. It was a statutory law. Chester County heard the case that found that law unconstitutional. The basis for the unconstitutionality of that law, and when you think about it, it makes kind of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So the court can't force an intact family, a husband and wife still married, to pay for their children's college. What gives the court the right to do that to people who are divorced? Equal protection of the law. The court can't come into your house and say, oh, you're together, but hey, too bad, you're paying for college. They can't do that. So the court ruled, and that came out of Chester County, Blue versus Blue, I believe the case. And that came out and said, yeah, that's unconstitutional. So I think that, I mean, they may not have heard about it, but it certainly does have impact, because it impacts your requirement as a divorced parent or as just a parent, whether you were married or not, to support your child post high school graduation, post 18 years old. So that's the first case. The second case is a case called Bryson versus Commonwealth versus Bryson. So when I was in the DA's office, I tried this case. It was a criminal case. It was a pretty bad, it was a rape, a kidnapping, aggravated assault. And in the course of that case, DNA evidence, so this is old, I'm dating myself, but DNA evidence was really pretty brand new. Nobody did it. We didn't even really know very much about it. It was the early 90s. We were just learning about the genomic sequencing and how it all works. So the criminal defendant in that matter was represented by a free counsel, not a public defender, because they had a conflict. They couldn't represent him because of some internal conflict that could compromise their representation. So he was represented by a private attorney who serves as conflict counsel for when the public defenders can't represent somebody. That attorney asked the court to perform a DNA test, and the court said no. He appealed it, and the court said that the denial of an indigent client, an indigent defendant, of a DNA test was a violation of his due process. So that case stands for the fact that indigent defendants have the right to have scientific tests that could have an impact on the evidence presented at trial.
All right. Well, thank you. That was very interesting. It's hard to believe how much things have changed. DNA evidence is something we pretty much take for granted these days. And I think as recently as the 1990s, that was something new and cutting edge. So let's go casual a little bit and tell us a little bit about yourself, non-professional. Like, what do you like to do?
Sure. What do I like to do? I like to read. I like to watch movies. I like to walk my dog. I like to spend time with my friends and my family, although we all know that's been challenging lately. But I do have my family here for dinner tonight, so I'm excited about seeing them all. It's been a couple weeks. I like to talk to people. I like to engage. I'm interested. I like to read because I like to read. I like to read everything. I like to read fiction, nonfiction. I like to read the news. Sometimes I need to get away from the news. What else do I like to do? I love to cook. I love to bake. I love being with people.
Are you cooking dinner tonight?
Actually, I baked a cake this morning, but I am not doing dinner tonight. Chicken on the grill is tonight's dinner, and that is my husband does the grill. So
okay, I was going to say I was extra impressed that you were taking time to your lasagna or whatever would be burning by now or whatever. Yeah. You timed it just right. So
no, I just did the prep work. I did the grocery shopping and all the prep work. Not making dinner tonight though.
So have you been out on the campaign trail? I mean,
you know what? Yes and no. I was out a lot prior to the petitions being signed. Talked to a lot of people, met a lot of people, lots of masking. But I've given myself maybe a week respite, 2 weeks respite, because I think that I want to make sure that the way we do it, people feel safe and engaging.
Absolutely.
You know, and I want to be respectful because the pace of vaccinations has been amazing across the country. And with the hope that Governor Wolf said that everybody in 1A should be vaccinated by the end of this month. And hopefully we'll come into April, we'll be able to be out more in public settings. I did hear an interesting story today where an attorney was attending a conference and all the conferences was virtual, but they were having an evening sort of like, I don't want to call it a happy hour, but an even in-person gathering. And they rented the rooftop of a parking garage.
There you go.
Creative.
It's getting warm enough to do that. And
it is getting warm enough to do that. It is getting warm enough to do that.
The election is on May 18th. It's only 58 days away, so it's coming up rather quickly. But I think we'll see a larger percentage of people vaccinated by that point. And hopefully, if what the president says is correct, everybody who wants a vaccine might be vaccinated by that day, if I'm correct, or at least had the first shot. So
exactly. Yeah, let's hope.
I do hope. Well, I think unless you have something you'd like to, a final message you'd like to deliver, I'll turn it over to you for that.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Phil, and I wish you good luck in your campaign as well. And what's the last word? So my last word is that when looking at judges, experience matters. Experience across the board, experience in a courtroom, and experience in life. I have 2 kids. I've raised them in Chester County. I've been a part of their community. I am invested in Chester County, a place that has given me so much, a place that I love and where I've raised my kids. Of all the candidates, I am the only candidate with actual judicial experience. I spent time in a courtroom as an assistant district attorney, prosecuting jury and non-jury trials. I spent time in a courtroom as a family lawyer, representing men and women, speaking, working with hearing officers and judges. But I am the only candidate who has actually presented and sat behind the bench as a hearing officer. I will be ready to be a judge on day one. I know how to run a courtroom, and I know how to take testimony, make decisions, judge credibility. So that is how I set myself apart from the remaining candidates. And I hope that I can count on your support. And thanks for the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today, Alita. It was a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better, and I'm sure I'll probably bump into you out there somewhere as the next 58 days progress.
I hope so.
I want to wish you a happy dinner with your family tonight. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope everybody else enjoys the rest of this beautiful day.
Thank you. So we have a couple minutes. I understand Tony is ready. Anthony Verway, I'm sorry, forgive me. Full disclosure, I've known Anthony now for well over 10 years. I've known him personally outside of this campaign from his time as working as the borough solicitor for the borough of Downingtown. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to our final candidate for this afternoon, Anthony Verway.
Good evening, Phil. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you, Tony. Okay, the floor is yours. You have as much time as you want to stump there and tell us why you would be the best candidate to be on the ballot in November.
Well, let me adjust here a little bit. I know most folks have heard my pitch, but what I'd like to say is that experience does matter. I heard Alita talk about that a few minutes ago, but experience isn't just being in the courtroom. You know, if it was just court experience that mattered, the entire bench, all the judges in Chester County would be, ADAs or district attorneys, but it's not. That's about 30% of the total number of judges we have in Chester County, because broad-based experience is important. I have tried cases that are very diverse. I haven't just practiced one single practice area, but a number of practice areas, including attorney disciplinary matters. All those trials took place before administrative tribunals, not before a judge, as you would traditionally would think about it, subject to the same rules of evidence and general procedure as you would see in a courtroom. I've also been in the Court of Common Pleas on a number of different matters, ranging from tax cases to eminent domain cases. So I have a broad base of experience in that regard as well. I am the only candidate that has argued appellate matters before all 3 of Pennsylvania's appellate courts. I'm the only one that's argued in 1 cases in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. And I believe I'm unique in that regard. And I also believe that's important because judges have to be able to write decisions that are going to be sustained on appeal. And having that experience is invaluable in the writing of decisions on cases of import that are going to be subject to appellate review. I also believe that there's been recognitions of my work publicly that have been peer reviewed. I've been named as a top lawyer by Mainline Today for the last 3 years. I've also been named what's called a super lawyer. I know that may not sound like a great moniker, but actually it's a pretty involved process. I know more than 5% of all attorneys in the Commonwealth in any particular practice area are recognized as a super lawyer, and that process is peer driven as well. Other lawyers review your practice, your experience, and your ethics, and then make recommendations and evaluations on that. I've also been named Best of the Bar by the Philadelphia Business Journal, and was also recognized and rated as being highly experienced by the Chester County Democratic Committee's Independent Judicial Evaluation Committee by unanimous vote. So I believe I have the experience as a lawyer, but also life experience. I was raised in poverty by my mother and my grandmother, neither of whom graduated from high school. But my mom did, in fact, push education as a ladder out of poverty, and something eventually that I attained. After high school, I enlisted in the military, served in the Air Force as a law enforcement specialist. After the military, I went to Penn State Law School. Then I went to college and law school, and I've been working for 31 years to build a legal practice and a reputation as a good lawyer, an ethical lawyer here in Chester County. And I've lived here for 31 years. When I moved here 31 years ago, Kathy and I lived in Malvern. I registered as a Democrat, and I've been a Democrat ever since. And the only reason I raise that issue is I know there's been some mention of judicial races not being partisan, but in fact they are partisan. Both the appellate courts, Superior Court, Commonwealth Court, Supreme Court, Democrats run on the Democratic side, Republicans run on the Republican side, and then they meet in the fall. If these weren't partisan elections, we wouldn't be running in primaries. We just have a general election. And I believe your registration and how long you've been registered does help voters understand what your belief system is. It's difficult to get to know each other, especially in these times, because we're not face to face. We don't have the ability to have the more intimate meetings where we can talk to each other. We're doing it by video, which it's hard to gauge people's reaction or read their expressions. But they need other information. And I believe that how long you've been registered in a particular party, what you've done for that party, isn't necessarily a partisan statement, but a statement about your belief system. And I think that's an important thing for people to consider as they're trying to evaluate who they believe would make a good judge. So I would submit that I believe I'm well qualified, both professionally, for my 60 years of life experience, and the 40 years that I've given the public service, ranging from serving in the military, working to raise funds for legal aid for over 12 years, to working for the Workforce Investment Board, helping folks find jobs for the unemployed and underemployed. So I believe that experience together will make me a very empathetic judge, someone who will be considerate and ensure that every person that enters my courtroom is treated with respect and dignity at all times. I think that's really the key in reaching both an independent and fair result, but also ensuring that every litigant that comes out of that courtroom feels that they had a fair opportunity to state their case and understand the results of that case. And with that, Phil, I'll throw it back to you if you have any questions.
Well, I do have a question. If you could elaborate a little bit more on the case that you argued at the Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
I've done that on 5 different occasions. So if there's any, I can talk about a couple of them if you'd like, but I think the most recent one was Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School. In that case, there was a charter school that attempted to utilize a new statute in the school law to try to recover tax funds from the Westchester Area School District. I represented the school district and sought to have that statute struck down as being unconstitutional because it would have had a negative impact on the funding for the school, not only the Westchester Area School District, but other school districts. And I was successful in arguing that case in the Supreme Court, having that statute struck down as unconstitutional. And it was a fairly interesting case. It's not often you get an opportunity to strike down a piece of legislation that's passed by the Pennsylvania legislature, but it did ensure that the school district would have adequate funding and not have to repay past taxes paid by the charter school's landlord. I've also argued a number of cases in the disciplinary system. I was an assistant disciplinary counsel for 10 years, where I prosecuted attorneys for ethics violations. During that time, I argued 3 cases in the Supreme Court. One was just a regular discipline case involving attempt to get reinstated from disbarment. Another addressed the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution and whether that authorized an individual who is licensed in federal court to practice in the state as well. And then there was a third that addressed the distinctions between the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's constitutional authority over the practice of law, set forth in Article 5 of the Constitution, and its disciplining of judges, in fact, the minor judiciary, a magisterial district judge. In that case, the magisterial district judge was also a lawyer, and discipline had taken place on one side of the equation as a lawyer, and they're trying to see if that impacted her serving as a judge in the minor judiciary, and we resolved that case as well. And there's one other one I was not successful in, involving the borough of Phoenixville, that involved a change in compensation for council members during their term of office.
Excellent. Well, I guess nobody wins them all, but now this is a somewhat related question that I asked the other two candidates. What could you pick a high-profile case that the court that you are seeking a seat on would have ruled on in the past 20 years? Something that relates to the average person in Chester County.
Well, I honestly, I would pick Pennsylvania Leadership Charter, actually, because it does that case was decided in Chester County, and actually did impact taxpayers, because the issue in that case was whether the school district would have to repay potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars back to a landlord who rented space to a charter school. So I think that impacted, well, a lot of folks wouldn't know about it probably, but it in fact did impact taxpayers' bottom line, because it did preserve revenue for the school district in that particular case. I think the other one might be Hopkins, which I think was decided within the last 10 years. And that is a criminal case, Commonwealth v. Hopkins, where mandatory minimums were struck down. That originated out of Chester County, but that carried through to the Supreme Court, and they struck down mandatory minimum sentencing requirements, which kind of changed the dynamic for the prosecution of criminal cases, because it eliminated the mandatory minimum sentence as a negotiating lever for prosecutors. Okay.
So tell me, have you been out on the campaign trail? Any in-person campaign events? Or
I have not. I am concerned about folks getting infected with COVID. I thought a lot about it. And frankly, during the entire petition process, I was very concerned for everyone, and I'm very thankful for everyone's efforts to help me get on the ballot. I was also concerned about everyone being out there and the contact that was taking place, even though everyone did a great job of distancing and masking and everything. As of right now, I've been working the campaign strategy, getting ready to get into it, because it's a little different with mail-in balloting now, but I haven't been going door to door yet. I think our plan is to probably just do canvassing the form of lit drop and that kind of thing, as opposed to going knocking on people's doors until everyone's vaccinated, hopefully this summer.
Related to petitions, can I just, for my own edification here, know how many signatures did you need to get?
We needed to get 250, but we were able to get 943.
That's great. Yeah. I had to get all of 10, so, and you always want to get more than what you need in case some of the signatures are struck down for various reasons and challenged. Yeah, it's tough to get out there and campaign or do anything. It was just 2 years ago we had, I believe it might have been one of our first candidate forums, and so much has changed in then. And we had it at a watering hole in Exton, and it was I believe broadcast as well. But we had a nice live audience as well, and then we were all set last year to do this at the Downingtown Middle School for our state senator races. And very quickly things changed, and we realized that this was not something that we were going to be able to do. And it's tough. You can take all the safety precautions that you can in the world, but some people are just not ready to have a face-to-face with a political candidate at their front door. But hopefully, as things progress in the next few weeks, we and even a month or two, things get a little bit better in that regard. So, but we don't want to open up too soon either.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, can I ask you one further question, and just your parting words to the voters of Chester County?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about what I like to do. Alita got
yeah, you know
I'm
what?
just kidding.
You're right.
Tell
Tell us about Tony. Tell us something that, with outside of work, when your tie's not on. And
I always wear a tie. Ask Kath. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I like to cook a great deal. I do a lot of the cooking at home, especially now. Being home has been great because it's given me the opportunity to try a lot of new and different things in the kitchen. Love to travel, but hasn't happened for over a year. Spend time with my family, which even though we're kind of locked together, have been locked together for the last year or so, it's kind of been a little bit of a blessing in a way because we really have gotten to spend time together that we might not normally have had. So that's been great. I'd like to read, watch movies, go in better times, go out to eat. I do. If anyone knows me, you can tell by looking at me that I do like to eat. So that's another thing that we very much enjoy, and I'm looking forward to a time when we're all able to do that once again. But that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Not too complicated, pretty straightforward, and I'm pretty much like everybody else. Just work hard. When you're at work, you work hard. When you're not, you enjoy your family.
Well, I know where you live, Tony. So if I'm going by there at any time and I smell something cooking, don't be.
Stop in. Having steak tonight.
Very good. So, your last word to the voters of Chester County.
I know, and I'm sure that others have spoken to the fact that I can't tell you how I'd rule in any particular case, but what I can tell you and assure you is that I will be impartial in every case that comes before me. I will listen. I'll take the evidence. I will give it consideration and make a decision, and a well-informed decision, not a rash decision. Not going to decide cases on a gut feeling. I'm going to think about them, consider the facts to ensure that it is truly fair and unbiased. And I absolutely positively will ensure that every person, and I mean every person that comes into my courtroom, is treated with respect and dignity. To me, that is incredibly important in the courtroom. And I ask for your support, both in the May primary and November election, if I'm fortunate enough to make it into the November election. And if anybody has any questions about my candidacy or my campaign, certainly welcome you to reach out to me. I have a Facebook page. If you can contact me through there, or you can send me an email at Tony Verwey. It's TONY, V as in Victor, ERWEY @gmail.com, and I'd be glad to answer your questions. And
I urge anybody who has a question not to hesitate to do that. So,
thank you.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you very much for talking to us today. And I wish you and all the candidates the best of luck in the coming weeks of the primary election, and whoever goes forward to November, especially that. So good luck, and thank you for coming and talking to us today. It
was my pleasure, and thank you very much for having me.
Our pleasure. You're welcome. So there we have it, 58 days away. Some things we have done differently in the past 14 months, however long since the pandemic started. Some things I actually hope don't change once we can change them. Certain things of people being close to each other, and I'm actually kind of getting used to Zoom meetings. So, some meetings I don't want to leave the house for, So anyway, I'm told now it is 5 o'clock. Our candidate forum is over. If I just want to put one final word in, if you are going to vote by mail, that's fine. I would just recommend that you've already hopefully applied for your ballot. Remember that last year, if you applied and got a ballot last year, that was only for last year. You have to reapply for this year, but you probably knew that already. And then once you get your ballot, fill it out and mail it back as soon as you can. I do believe they're going to be doing drop boxes again, so that might be the best way to go for that. If you vote in person, obviously wear a mask and have respect for the election officials and the people at the polls. And with that, I'm going to close today. It's 5 o'clock. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for watching us today, and good luck to all our candidates. I'm Phil Dake. Oh, one more thing. I'd like to thank my fellow ICC leadership team members, Rob Cates, who does all the technical work for us and makes programs like this possible, Shannon Brown, Laura Davis, Hetty Ginterreiter, Luke Bauerlein, and a friend of ours who does the daily action item, Jessica Weingarten. Hope to see you all in person real soon. Thank you. Good night, everybody.